on, and you have to have the feeling that the man has not won a Grand Slam tournament now all year, and that he is looking to the U.S. Open with more than average eagerness.
And Jimmy Connors, of course, has had some back problems early, and he's trying to come back from that. Really slowed him down in April, but he's back.
You know, you can say a lot about Jimmy Connors. They say that he's getting on in years, and he will be 33 years very soon. And but he still holds, for a professional player, the 105 career singles titles, and that's something that no other player has yet even come close to. So the guy has been out there for a tremendous number of years. He has played. He has been an exciting part of the sport of tennis for so long, and the reasons are obvious. He gets out there, he gives it 100%. He's terribly proud of that fact, and you have to hand it to him that when Jimmy Connors plays tennis, you know that you're getting the best that he has. And of course, McEnroe knows that as well.
And McEnroe obviously will use his game. He'll try to get to the net. Connors with a great return of serve. We are at the Jerry Park Tennis Stadium. Used to be the home of the Montreal Expos before they moved to Olympic Stadium. This is the men's singles of the Canadian Open. They alternate this every year. Next year they'll go back to Toronto with the men's, and the women's will be here in Montreal.
Not bad conditions to play tennis in today, frankly, John. There is very little wind. There's some breeze that you see, the flags blowing in the wind. You'll get a chance to see those, but it's not a factor down there on the court. The wind has been a factor in previous matches this week. Kevin Curran, I think, was bothered by it to a certain extent anyway on Thursday evening when he lost to Jimmy Arias. There you see the wind blowing up there. As I said, not a big factor though down there on the court because it's very well protected. The court surface is a hard court. As I said, the same surface that they play the U.S. Open on. Medium to fast speed here on the center court, something that Curran said after his match with Arias he thought hurt him. He played out there on number 4, which is a slightly slower court, and took something away from his serve. But Arias is in the second semifinal against Ivan Lendl, and that should be an interesting one too.
The capacity here is 11,000. We're expecting a crowd of about 10,000, and we are just about ready to play. Best of 3 sets. What's the difference for these two players? Many of the Grand Slam events are best of 5. This is a best of 3.
Not a big factor. These boys can get through a 5-set situation. You've seen it a number of times, John. I know at the U.S. Open, they'll play the Saturday semi-final 5-setters, sometimes get out there on the Sunday and do exactly the same thing in what very often in New York is oppressive heat, and certainly it's less than ideal conditions with those planes flying over what seems like just that stadium built right in the end of the runway there. So that is not going to be a factor. This 3 sets only means that certainly as far anyway as stamina or physical conditioning is concerned, doesn't mean anything. Both of these boys can give it everything they got for the full period.
McEnroe 47-5 this year. Connors 37-12 as we begin. What will be the key early as you watch McEnroe play? Or is there an early key for him?
Oh, I think you'll see McEnroe attack. Having said that, of course, he stays back on the first point, but the point I'm making is that he is going to attack just as soon as he can, and Jimmy Connors is, I guess the real key is how successfully he's going to be able to return serve, which is going to keep McEnroe from attacking, because if you let John get to the net, you're in real trouble.
Each of his first serves have been out thus far, and on that first point, on his second serve, he stayed back, and Connors netted the forehand.
See if he tries to come in behind the second serve. That's the first question that I had for Arias and Curran both after their match.
He did that time. So Connors gets the winner, and it's 15-all.
That's the interesting part of the formula, John. It's whether you can get to the net behind your second serve. McEnroe, of course, is going to try to do it. You saw him there losing the second point doing it. He won the first point staying back. But ultimately, if he can successfully get to the net behind second serve, then it's going to make it a lot tougher for Jimmy Connors. The court surface, though, is, as I said, medium to fast. And as we get into about the third, fourth, fifth game, those balls are going to get a little heavier. And that's going to make it a little more difficult for him.
He still has not gotten the first serve in this first game. First set, semifinals of the 1985 Canadian Open. We are in Montreal and delighted to have you with us this afternoon. stays back and nets the forehand.
15-30.
So it's 15-30 in a 2 out of 3. Are these early games more important than they would be in a 5-set match, for example?
Marginally, because you have less time to come back, of course.
And we're even at 30.
But these first games, whether it's a 2, 3, 4, 5-set match, John, are important because they sometimes set the tone. You get an early break, it'll set the tone for the rest of the set. So you want to try to hold on to serve. That's the main thing in the first 3 or 4 games, especially against a guy like McEnroe. See, if you don't break him early, he's finally going to get to break you, and you know it.
There's the first ace of the afternoon.
Because there are certain players that you play against that you fully expect at least once a set to be able to break. McEnroe is not one of those kinds of players. Watch McEnroe here, ace down the middle into Connors' forehand.
The last time Connors won, Queens in '83, that was grass. And there are 2 aces in a row, and game 1 goes to McEnroe. So John McEnroe holds service. They'll change sides. We'll be back at the Jerry Park in Montreal right after this. Jimmy Connors serving for the first time here in the semifinals of the Canadian Open.
15.
McEnroe held his first serve, so it is 1-0 McEnroe here in 1. And again, Connors makes the mistake. He got a good deep serve that time on his first serve, but couldn't take advantage of it.
He'll get a very high percentage of first serves, Connors. He always does. Not that big a factor, though, because it's more like a 3/4 pace serve. Gets a lot of them in, but he doesn't serve many aces.
And again, Connors nets the forehand, and it's love 40.
Seems so repetitive to say it, John, but the players like to attack his forehand side, and there's a good reason for it. It's by far the more vulnerable of the 2 wings. His backhand side is just, it has more penetration, and it's a much more consistent shot.
Triple break point for McEnroe in game 2. There it is.
Game. McEnroe.
So McEnroe breaks a love in game 2, and he quickly takes that break and moves ahead 2-0.
2-0. 2-love.
September the 2nd, Jimmy Connors will be 33 years old. He's the only player in the top 50. He's the oldest player in the top 50 in the rankings. McEnroe is 26.
And 0. 15
Talked about the '85 meeting between these two. It's surprising that they haven't met really since the U.S. Open in '84. That match was won by McEnroe in 5 sets. They played in Toronto semifinals in the Canadian last year, also won by McEnroe. That was a 3-set, a 6-4 in the third, a good match, semifinal. We covered that.
15-all. McEnroe is the defending champion here. But Yvonne Lendl, who we will see later this afternoon, also live on ESPN, has won this championship 3 times. First winner in '79 was Bjorn Borg. Apparently, from all we can understand, that Jimmy's back problems that bothered him early in the year are no longer a factor. He's healthy. Some reaction from McEnroe as he hits the ball wide. Connors trying to break back. It is 15-30. McEnroe leading 2-love in the first set. That back problem that Jimmy had cost him in Chicago when he had to default to McEnroe, and a week later in Dallas. He retired in a match against Yvonne Lendl. McEnroe thought the shot by Connors was long, and it's double break point now for Jimmy Connors.
No, I believe that it was called long finally after that complaint from McEnroe.
Are you fucking up again?
Uh-oh.
Seems you did this to me last week for a change.
From part 2. 30 all.
Little reaction from both players that you heard.
I guess that tells us a little bit about the intensity of this match, eh?
Well, I tell you what, the thing that really surprises me is that he didn't get a warning on that obscenity.
It is 30 all. Connors thought he had a double break point.
I mean, the man in the chair can hardly say that he didn't hear it.
No, I would say not. That one is good.
Well, the thing about those confrontations, whatever you want to call them, is that neither one of these two players gets affected by them. You know, you saw Jimmy Connors having made that remark that he made to the man in the chair come through and play an outstanding forehand down the line as you see him thread the needle for the winner by McEnroe.
So it's a break point now for Jimmy Connors. He's down a break. It's 2-love here in the first set. 105 career singles titles. Over $6 million in prize money. It is deuce.
I am still, John, astounded by the fact that he was not given at least a warning for the words that he used there to the umpire. Absolutely astounded.
Maybe the umpire was so shocked that he didn't react.
Then he shouldn't be in the chair.
Thus far, McEnroe not with much success on his first serve. He did have a couple of aces in game one. The shot by Connors is long. Really give it a good bolt. You can almost get it to the swimming pool, which is beyond the far end of the tennis stadium. The advantage, McEnroe. Trying to go up 3-love in the first set. And we're deuce again. We saw the strength of Jimmy Connors there, the return of service, because it was a good McEnroe serve.
Doesn't matter how well you serve against him, you're going to have to play the point. The guy stretches as well as anybody else, even to the wide balls. He can also return extremely well when you throw them into the body as well. So 6, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to make the first volley against Connors. It'll come back.
And he does make it there, following that first serve, and he knocks the winner home.
You know, it was a very good return of serve. It was right into the left-hander's left hip. Watch it here again. You see McEnroe coming in, but the guy's got an extraordinarily talented volley, as you saw right there. Let the racket head drop slightly, but he seems to be able to do it and not lose control. Most people cannot.
And that serve is long. It's advantage McEnroe. Trying to go up by 3 games in the first set.
Ace.
And he does. So he holds serve. McEnroe not happy with some things that happened, but he's still leading 3-love. And we'll be back to the Jerry Park Tennis Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada with more of the 1985 Canadian Open.
See, here's the reason McEnroe has such good power on the serve. Take a look at this point here. He's now serving in the opposite direction. You see that he's facing you now. He's facing behind him. Now he'll start to come through the ball, and watch the tremendous shoulder rotation that he gets into that ball. You see how much shoulder movement there is there? You wonder why McEnroe has a good serve. That's where he generates the power.
It is Connors serving in the far court. Jimmy is down a break already.
If you, having just seen that picture of John McEnroe, will compare Jimmy Connors' serve to it, one of the reasons that he gets so much less on his serve is that he does not use as much shoulder. The second is that he will drop his right. Remember, he's a left-handed server. He'll drop that right shoulder just a little bit too soon, and that's another thing that loses him power on the serve.
McEnroe coming in with the volley. Connors has not won a point on his own serve yet.
It's just great anticipation on that passing shot, wasn't it? You know, if you watch Connors carefully here, he had time to go cross-court. McEnroe was not fooled for a second, though. He knew that Connors was going to go down the line, and he closed the gap.
Love 30. And finally, Jimmy gets a point on his own serve. It's 3-love McEnroe here in the first set. That's 2 out of 3 semifinals. Yvonne Lendl, Jimmy Arias to follow live here on ESPN. Connors is still playing with his old T2000 racket. They're working on the pro staff that he endorses, but he's not using it right now.
Well, remember, he went through the deal where he changed and had, I thought, actually quite a successful beginning to that racket. But I had the feeling always that he would go back to the T2000, because I felt at the minute that he wasn't winning a lot of tournaments, he would say it's the fault of the racket and go back.
I think it's a natural tendency,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes. Don't blame him for it.
30 all. Again, a good deep serve by Connors. Coming in and nets the backhand.
You cannot, by the way, at least I don't think you can go out and buy a T2000 in the stores anymore, because they don't make it anymore. It has one of the smallest sweet spots of any racket in the business. And when anybody comes to, for example, the beautiful Fisher Island down there and just off Miami and say, help me with my game, and he's carrying a T2000, I say, buy a new racket.
That's the first thing you do.
Right.
A chance for McEnroe to break again. Right on the back of the line that time. Two heavyweights slug it out.
On the back of the line, you were right, and John was hoping for a call. But I thought you were right when you called it. There it is again, at least a part of it. That's the mistake that John finally made, to let Jimmy Connors stay back, at least stay in this game a deuce.
McEnroe won the first 3. Connors trying to hold serve, stay in this first set. And it'll be advantage Connors. The overall series, the first 29 meetings, of course, Jimmy Connors dominated early on, but 8 times in a row, McEnroe has won.
Clear as day.
This is from 2 points ago,
right.
You remember.
It's too bad to try to call anything. Now, what can you call the ball, right?
You know, just like last week in Stratton, John, if you got a chance to see that, the mics on the court there pick everything up. An outstanding sound system that we had in Stratton. We have it again today. The players almost whisper, and we'll know about it.
Yeah, we found out early, didn't we?
Yep.
holds serve for the first time, and he set that up with a good deep serve to start that point.
Well, the main thing is he gets that good serve. When he played at his best, he used to attack after the serve, as you see him doing here. Now he gets into that volley, moves as well for that two-hander as anybody does who hits a one-hander. And, you know, they talk about lack of reach with the two-hander. And yes, you do lack some reach, but Connors moves very quickly to adapt for that relative lack of reach that he has with the two hands. McEnroe didn't win in Australia against Antonin. He didn't win the French. He did not win at Wimbledon, but on the Nabisco Grand Prix point standings with over 2,600, he is #1. The Hewlett-Packard ATP computer, he is #1. And on the total prize money rankings, he is #1 with over 658,000 for the year so far.
And he is the defending champion in this event.
He'll add $51,000 US if he wins this title tomorrow.
But first, Jimmy Connors. He leads 3-1, McEnroe does. Again, right on the back of the line.
Well, that gives you a feel for which way the wind is blowing. When the ball gets up there, it will blow as you look at the court from your left to right. McEnroe's lob may have gone in, but there is a pretty ferocious wind up there, pretty, 10 miles an hour maybe. Down there on the court, it's not a factor, but the lobs, it will definitely do something too.
The court was bathed in sunshine when we began. The clouds have now moved in. He hit it long, but what a great return of serve again by Connors.
30-15.
That's what does it for Jimmy. He knows that. He's got to return awfully well. I think he has not, up to this point, returned badly, but of course McEnroe plays so extremely well. And he picks up those returns of serve so well that's why he's been able to stay ahead.
40-15 McEnroe, trying to go up 4-1 in the first set. Best 2 out of 3 semifinals. Championship tomorrow here on ESPN, 1 o'clock Eastern time. And again, that will be a best 2 out of 3. As the players really starting to tune up their games now, Cliff, for the U.S. Open, which comes up in a couple weeks.
Yes, they are, and that's why we have such a good field here, and why we had such a good field last weekend in Stratton, Vermont, because the surfaces are so similar.
Strong field is expected next week, except that McEnroe will not play next week.
Well, the Nabisco Grand Prix tournament next week is in Cincinnati. There is a match that we will be covering on ESPN that I hope you will join us with from the New York area. That I feel that does include John McEnroe.
Okay. And of course, they'll all be there for the U.S. Open. So Connors gets even on McEnroe's serve here in Game 5. It was 40-15, but Connors has come back. McEnroe 3 times Wimbledon champion, 81, 83, and 84. 4 times U.S. Open champion, 79, 80, 81, and 84. Connors made a play on the overhead, but couldn't get it across. So McEnroe takes the advantage.
Excuse me, John, let me take that back. Yvonne Lendl is going to be there next weekend. Jimmy Connors will also be there. Elliot Telscher and Jimmy Arias Sundstrom as well.
And we'll tell you more about that as we go along. This is the first of 2 semifinal matches. You'll see Lendl coming up as McEnroe holds serve. And he builds his lead here in the opening set of the semifinals of the 1985 Canadian Open. It is now McEnroe 4 and Jimmy Connors 1. Connors will serve to try to keep this one going. First set, stay with us. We'll come back to Montreal right after this. The tennis trail will take Cliff Drysdale and our ESPN cameras to Jericho, New York next week. That's the Executone Hamlet Challenge Cup, Saturday and Sunday here on ESPN. Connors trailing 4-1. First set. Down a break. And McEnroe able to put that one away. Jimmy was out of the point.
You just have to keep the ball away from McEnroe. You talk about how good he is on the volleys and the serve, and of course he is. The other thing that he can do, though, if you give him any kind of opening, he can make the passing shots. He doesn't have that European-style big topspin game, but he has tremendous control nevertheless.
And Connors had him going the wrong way that time. It's 15-all.
Watch him. Watch John here. He's got to pretty much try to close the gap because Connors has so much of a space to put it in there with a cross-court forehand. And McEnroe knew it, tried to close the gap, and Connors just changed it up on him.
Your percentages. Connors, as expected, much higher than McEnroe on the first serve.
But as we said before, a much less meaningful first serve.
The fact that you said that they can have these little fits of temper and still keep their head in the game sometimes is amazing.
Well, they do, both of these two boys. You can have any kind of discussion you want with them, and they can get mad and everything, but when the chips are down, they'll play the next point for real.
Good serve that time from Jimmy Connors to go up 40-15.
40-15.
Two-time Wimbledon champion, 5 U.S. Open crowns. Now it is Connors with the volley. So Jimmy holds serve.
And a very good game from Connors, too, there. He really played an outstanding game. Watch this on the replay here as McEnroe throws this one across, and the easy volley there for Jimmy to finish up that game.
But he is still down a break. It's 4-2. First set, best of 3.
It's not over yet. Remember that he had at one point points for 4 games to love in the first set, which pretty much would have been history. But having fought back from that point, Connors, and now having held serve, he is only 1 serve break behind and is by no means out of the set. He could have been, but he isn't. McEnroe doesn't like that serve call either.
But it will be his second serve coming up.
He said he's trying to contain himself after the semi-final and final in Stratton. But he has difficulty, doesn't he?
And Connors that time not able to return the second serve.
Well, you know, as forceful as his return of serve is, it is amazing to me that he gets as high a percentage of serves in. He doesn't hit with a lot of topspin, hits the ball very flat. So the ball stays much closer to the net that the topspin is returned. Look at that one. See, that's a big serve. He hits a big return, hits the ball early. So by the time McEnroe gets the net, no matter how quickly he's going to get in, the ball is going to be at his feet. And that's what has been the Connors trademark for so many years.
And the sun pops back out. Jerry Park. About 10,000 on hand for today's semifinals. Another ace to McEnroe. And he goes up 40-love in Game 7.
Talk about the Jerry Park. I think we should tell the folks that this used to be a baseball stadium, and it has been reconstructed, I suppose you could say, for tennis. We have 6 courts now around here. Matches are played during this 64-man event on outdoor courts as well, of course.
I mean outside the stadium. There's no indoor facility here.
But actually, I quite like the stadium. It has quite a nice atmosphere, the way that it has been presented and reconstructed.
Connors comes in. The shot is just long.
It was a rather vague effort there by John McEnroe at that passing shot. I wondered why, and then of course I realized that 40 love, he doesn't feel like he has to give it everything in order to win the last point. He was way out of it.
And where he is about where the second baseman would play in old Parc Jerry at the Montreal Expos.
Yes.
So McEnroe holds his service. Connors returning here, but not able to return on the final point, the ace, and it is a lead for McEnroe in set one. It's now 5-2. Welcome back to Montreal. I'm John Sanders with Cliff Drysdale. Only one service break so far in this first set. Would you classify it as routine, or how do you look at it?
Routine is one way you could put it as far as John McEnroe is concerned. In his matches with Jimmy Connors, there have been some close ones, but as you mentioned earlier on in this telecast, Johnny, he has not won a match in, this is their 10th outing now since back at the U.S. Open. Well, no, it was before that, as a matter of fact. It was Queen's Club a year and a half ago almost. One of those matches, admittedly, the last one in Chicago, was a walkover because Connors was hurt, but it is still a very impressive record, and I think this is pretty much what most folks expected.
Connors comes in and puts it away.
And I'll remind you, there could have been a lot worse. 3 games to love. Connors serving break points for a second break for John McEnroe, and this set could already have been history, as you see Jimmy Connors coming in here with the approach shot down McEnroe's forehand for the winner.
$15-all.
But as I also said earlier on in the match, you have to keep McEnroe from getting in and attacking you unmercifully. That's what he does so well. Take a look at that, 20 approaches. McEnroe.
Twice as many as Connors.
Right.
But Connors has tried to change it up a little bit this afternoon, come in occasionally. This is game 8 of the first set. McEnroe leading 5-2. 30-15.
30-15.
McEnroe was winning at the start of 1985, but he's had some nagging injuries. Nothing major. Battled a touch of the flu. But the victory last week at Stratton Mountain certainly helping his confidence. 40-15.
Well, the thing you have to remember is it's so easy to say he hasn't won a Grand Slam, and of course he hasn't, but just take a look at the tournaments that he has won, starting at Philadelphia, which is a very big event, WCT Houston, Milan. He won at Chicago and WCT Atlanta. He won Stratton last week. Not a bad year for any normal player, not the greatest year for John McEnroe, I suppose.
Here comes Connors. McEnroe gets there and puts it away.
And by the way, you can say in the same vein about Jimmy Connors that yes, he hasn't won a major and he hasn't beaten John McEnroe or Ivan Lendl all year, but he hasn't had a bad year when you consider that he was a French Open semi-finalist, which is not his surface. He got the semis at Wimbledon, losing to Curran. You remember that match. Runner-up at Fort Myers, he beat Creek and Gomez there before losing to Lendl. Runner-up at Chicago. Not a bad year.
Prize money, $386,000.
And he is number 4 on the Nabisco Grand Prix point standings behind McEnroe, Lendl, and Wielander, and also number 4 on the ATP computer. Behind those same 3 and in that order.
I guess he spent most of the last couple of years at number 3. Philander getting in there now. Connors keeping it deep, and McEnroe doesn't like it. Advantage Connors. McEnroe thought it was long. The umpire said it was on the line.
I'd like to make a comment, but I didn't see it land clearly enough to be able to make one. I don't know how it was. Oh, yes. Yes.
Now Jimmy Connors will point out where he thought the ball was. Back to deuce.
Well, I tell you, I thought it was a perfect shot myself. I think it got the line. In fact, it may have even been slightly inside the line, which doesn't mean I'm right, because we're a heck of a long way from it, which is why I'm real reluctant to call them. Watch it again here on the replay, if you will.
It eats up the white, doesn't it?
It sure does. You're not going to be able to call it on the replay. That's what Jimmy thinks of the call. I think McEnroe feels the same way about a lot of the calls that he feels have gone against him. Well, you used the word earlier on in this match that we will not repeat, but on that occasion he didn't.
You heard the beep, a fault call. Second serve, deuce.
John, you better explain about the beep. The Cyclops line calling machine is in operation here. You have seen it at the US Open. It's used also at Wimbledon. It helps the lines people make the calls. I like it personally because at least it takes the human factor out of it. If the thing makes a beep, it's long. And it's the same for both players, no matter whether the call is good or bad. And that's an equalizing factor anyway.
McEnroe now with a set point. It's a best of three. This is set one. And that's it. So John McEnroe has taken the first set, 6-2, as he breaks Connors twice. Good start from McEnroe, and here's what we were talking about, Cliff.
Well, that's the thing that stretches from one side of the court to the other. I don't know exactly how it does it, but it probably throws a beam of light across there, and when the ball goes over or through it, it breaks the light just behind the line, and that's what calls, or at least helps the people, the linespersons, make the calls on the serve. Ace.
Well, that's the way set two begins. McEnroe winning set one, 6-2, before 10,000 tennis fans here at Jerry Park.
They say there's an 11,000 capacity here. Be surprised if they're not more than 10 now, because this place is packed.
Two heavyweights slugging it out for the 30th time. McEnroe really in the groove on those first two serves, Cliff.
Well, when he gets in the groove on the first serve, or the second serve for that matter, there's not much between the two. It's just very difficult to do anything to counteract it. First serve especially, of course. You heard the cameras clicking just before he was about to serve. Maybe that's why he stopped for a moment.
Good deep volley that time from McEnroe, and he goes up 40-love. And a love game for McEnroe as we start the second set. He won the first set 6-2, and he takes a 1-0 one-love lead here in set number 2. We are live in Jerry Park, Montreal. Stay with us. We have more of the 1985 Canadian Open coming up. We've had a couple of little verbal battles between McEnroe and Connors, but it is John McEnroe winning the physical battle right now, taking set 1 6-2 and leading 1-love here in the second set. Rich Kaufman is the umpire's name, who is in charge down there this afternoon.
He is one of 2 new MIPTC full-time chair umpires, by the way. Which makes it all the more surprising to me when Jimmy Connors had his say earlier on in the match with the word that I cannot repeat over the air, or will not, that he didn't get a warning. I will certainly take the chance of asking him why when this is over.
That is the first double fault we've had.
Take a look at that, 52, 82 for Connors percentage-wise, but look at the winners. 12 for McEnroe, 6 only for Connors, 12 unforced errors, and 15 for Connors. That says a lot, doesn't it?
And that's the story of the first set. In a best of 3, if McEnroe should break Connors early, he'd be in big trouble. And it's 15-30.
That low forehand that lost him that point, you remember that's where he started losing it.
Exactly
in the first
right.
set.
The first serve was game 2, and he lost his serve at love. Connors trying to keep McEnroe deep. Again, he nets the backhand that time. Kind of in between. Wasn't sure what he was going to do there, I don't think. Started to come in and couldn't make the shot. So, and he's in danger of being broken in the second game of the second set. It's exactly what happened in the first set. So there's the break. And as it did in set 1, it comes in the second game here. McEnroe goes up 2-love. Jimmy Connors is in trouble.
You see both of the fellas staying back on a point like that, John. Under those circumstances, you'd think that John McEnroe wouldn't have the same kind of edge that he has when he comes into the net, and indeed he doesn't. You almost have the feeling that McEnroe is saying to himself, well, let me just see if I can win this thing from the back as well. I know I can win it by going in. He has tremendous talent. The variety of that man is just extraordinary.
What kind of place do you put him in tennis history?
It's a difficult question to answer. I'll try in a moment.
Okay.
I think McEnroe has to prove himself over the next 2 or 3 years. He's been number 1 now for a couple of years, and then some maybe, but a guy like Jimmy Connors was number 1 in the world for 5 straight years. Remember, Bjorn Borg won Wimbledon 5 years. He won, straight years that was, he won the French 6 times. McEnroe doesn't have that kind of record yet. And you wonder whether he has the mental stamina to stay through it for that period of time.
Well, he made the same comments about Boris Becker. The mental battle that Becker, as he tries to raise his game to that every day or every week high level and maintain the pressure that he will go through. Actually also said that he kind of welcomes the fact that Becker will take some of the pressure off of him from a media standpoint.
I think he probably does. I'm glad you brought up the subject of Becker, because I had a comment that I wanted to make about him as well. We had him on ESPN 2 weeks ago playing the Davis Cup, destroying the U.S. in that event. And of course he won Wimbledon, but so many people have said to me since the Wimbledon final and watching Davis Cup, is Becker for real? Let me tell you that in my opinion, there is no question but that he is for real, and I'm delighted about it because this is an outstandingly versatile player.
Is he going to, obviously, when he gets to the U.S. Open, places like this, he can't go through his lunging, rolling, diving style. He's going to have to change a little bit, isn't he?
I think that's true, and that's why I don't think he's going to win the U.S. Open. I'm not sure that he's even going to come close. I hope that he does well in the event, but I don't think this surface is best suited to his game. I think he's a clay court or a basketball player, which does not mean that he can't learn to play on it, because I'm sure that ultimately he will.
An ace for McEnroe. It's 40-15. Trying to go up 3-love in the second set and put Connors in a hole he may not be able to get out of. A fault. You saw the ace count, 6 for McEnroe, none for Connors. It's 40-15 here. McEnroe trying to go up 3-love. There's ace number 7, and he does indeed go up 3-love. McEnroe in control. Connors in trouble here in the semifinals of the 1985 Canadian Open. Lost the first set. He's down love 3 in the second set. He'll serve.
Possibly the best backhand in tennis, certainly probably the best serve return in tennis is Jimmy Connors' backhand. Take a look at how he takes the racket back with the shoulders, how they move all together. At this point, if he had his name on his back, his opponent would be able to read his name, wouldn't he? That's how far around he gets it. That's how far you should be. Now you'll see him come through the ball with, again, a shoulder rotation, this time a forward one.
And Connors serving down a break here in the second set. Oh, a really nice cross-court backhand that time by McEnroe. Low, and it sliced it, and Connors was not able to return it. Connors got that one deep enough that McEnroe couldn't handle it. It's 15-all. There's sometimes, as you watch McEnroe, when he really gets rolling, he is so smooth, and he just glides across the court. Just seems to touch the ball. The shot by McEnroe was long.
You're exactly right, John. He plays with feel and with touch a lot more than he does with strength. You know, the Europeans and guys like Lendl, the man that you'll see as you take a look at your first serve percentages, hit the ball so hard, and they swing with that European topspin swing. McEnroe does not, but he gets away with it. Because he plays in a different kind of a way. He has a continental grip on the forehand side, as you see. Racket face, when he takes it back, is not closed. The wind blew him out there, as a matter of fact. As we talked about it earlier, the wind is blowing from, as you watch from the long camera angle, the wind is blowing from left to right, and McEnroe was taken way out of the court. There it is.
I think he was slightly off balance, too, maybe because of the wind as he tried to get in position, and thus he netted the shot. 40-15. First serve. It was 6-2 McEnroe in the first set. McEnroe up 3-love here in the second set. First of 2 this afternoon on ESPN. Good serve by Jimmy Connors, who holds his service in game 4 of the second set.
Our old friends Flack and Seguso are in the semi-final of the doubles against Slosel and Smith from Czechoslovakia. Edberg and Jared are in the semis of the doubles against Gundhardt and Tarocci. And of course, in the second singles semi-final, which you'll see live with us later, Ivan Lendl and Jimmy Arias.
And it should be a fun match.
Oh, yes.
Another ace for McEnroe.
Talk about John McEnroe not being a hard hitter. Both of those boys, Lendl and Arias, will be flailing away, particularly off the forehand side. question, I suppose, is how vulnerable Jimmy is going to be to the backhand and how well Lendl serves. Stay with us for that one.
Well, Lendl simply crushed Anders Jared last night.
Oh, and that's being kind to Jared, too. He was destroyed. Any words you can think of that... I guess he didn't win more than 21 points in the match.
Huh. The pressure from McEnroe, and he goes up 30 love.
Matter of fact, I don't guess. I know it because I looked at the scorecard afterwards. He won 21 points in the match, and he won 3 of those in the first game.
He was non-existent after that.
That's right.
I think it shows you sometimes the strength of these players. When you get to this level, if they get it going, they can wipe you out. There he is again. What touch.
Boy, that looks easy, you know.
It's not, though, is it?
Oh, boy. That drop volley, you soften the wrist. Take a look at it again. You soften the wrist when you make contact with it. Now, that return is played very hard from Connors. Remember, he hits the ball flat. McEnroe grabs that thing on his racket, softens the wrist as he makes contact with it, and just drop volleys it over. Extraordinary shot.
An ace, and he serves a love game. McEnroe adding to his advantage here in the second set. First semifinal match in the 1985 Canadian Open. He's in control right now. He won the first set 6-2, leads here 4-1. We'll be back. Stay with us. Jimmy Connors serving. He's down 4-1. Second set. McEnroe took the first set 6-2. Jimmy went cross court, and it was long.
The word that you used in the first set, you asked me a question about what was going on out there. John, was routine. I suppose this is another routine match between the two, but nothing with Jimmy ever stays routine. You know, he never in his own mind gives up.
We talk about the effort of McEnroe, how he does make it look effortless sometimes. Connors the opposite. Grunts and groans on every shot and every swing.
And remember when he came back to be #1 after Bjorn Borg beaten him so many times, and he really could not find a formula for beating Borg. Then Borg retired, and he came right back and overtook McEnroe to be #1 in the world, albeit for just a one-year period.
It's love 30 in game 6, second set. McEnroe trying to make short work of Jimmy Connors. Jimmy was broken twice in the first set, in the second game and in the 7th game. And he was broken in the second game of this set. He has not broken McEnroe this afternoon. All. Trying to wish Jimmy Connors making his way to the net. And you see some of the very nice boxes that surround Jerry Park main court here. McEnroe not quite able to get it back. Connors had the deep serve that time. Came to the net. McEnroe couldn't handle the ball deep on the baseline. So Jimmy Connors holds service. He was down love 30, but came back to hold his serve. It's 4-2.
Been talking about the crowds right here. This is almost certainly going to be a record for the Canadian Open, part of the Nabisco Grand Prix. From after Wimbledon, going through Boston, Washington, which had record crowds, Indianapolis, Stratton Mountain last week had record crowds. It's been a very good year for the U.S. Summer Circuit.
Great return by Connors. But McEnroe, when he gets up to the net like that, really keeps the pressure on you. You can't let down for a moment, and Jimmy wasn't able to handle that one backhand return. That's the one.
Oh, yes.
30 love on the ace.
30 love.
More tennis action to come here on ESPN. So don't leave us, because Yvonne Lendl and Jimmy Arias will play in the next semifinal. We'll have that one live as well. Back-to-back aces.
40 love.
Absolutely nothing Connors could do about that.
Look at that. 12 aces.
Trying to beat Jimmy Connors for the 18th time in 30 meetings. And another love game on his serve. So McEnroe adds to his lead here in the second set. It's 5-2. Jimmy Connors will have the ball in his court when we come back. Semifinals of the 1985 Canadian Open, and we have Jimmy Arias, who celebrated his 21st birthday with a victory in last night's quarterfinals against Yvonne Lendl, who was overpowering against Anders Jarrett in his quarterfinal match. They will slug it out.
I don't know what that's all about. Whatever, McEnroe 6-2 and 5-2 ahead. He doesn't have much to worry about, does he? Tell you what, Connors came very close to hitting that ball before it bounced. Very close. And of course, if he had, he would have lost the point.
Against bar 2, 15 all.
It's 15 all. This is the 8th game. It was at this point in the first set that McEnroe broke Connors for the second time and thus won that first set. Jimmy Arias and Yvonne Lendl to follow, and it appears at this point that McEnroe will wait for the winner tomorrow. We'll have that one as well here on ESPN. Live coverage from Montreal begins at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. It's 30-15, Connors trying to hold serve. He has not broken. He really hasn't come close to broken. McEnroe has served 3 love games in this set. The first, the 5th, and the 7th. Jimmy not bothering to look back.
40-30.
So it's 40-30. McEnroe, a little conversation with a photographer. Matter of fact, in this second set, Jimmy has only 1 point on McEnroe's serve. It's wide. Connors holds. And it's 5-3. Now McEnroe, who's just been devastating on his service, will try to serve for the match. This is John Sanders with Cliff Drysdale. Cliff is on his way down to courtside right now to grab the players after the match is over. 6-2 in the first set, McEnroe, and he's trying to win the second set 6-3. still, according to my notes, only 1 point for Jimmy Connors against McEnroe's serve in this second set. That's how total the domination has been on the part of that man. Another ace. 30 love.
From 0, 30 love.
Jimmy Connors finding himself simply overmatched this afternoon. Goes down the middle, and Connors can't get there. The critical game for Connors in each set was the second. He lost his first serve in each of the 2 sets. It's in play. Connors coming up. McEnroe gets there, and Connors answers. The crowd responds what may be one of the best points of the match. Here comes Connors. Now watch the quickness of McEnroe as he gets there. Tries to go down the line, but Connors answers. It's 30-15. Jimmy looking for some kind of spark. Maybe that'll help him. McEnroe serving for the match. There have been some verbal skirmishes in the match, most of them in the first set. And again, Connors' problem this afternoon has been that forehand. He's missed it numerous times. So a couple of match points for John McEnroe, trying to defend his Canadian Open Championship. A year ago, he won that title, beating Vitas Gerulaitis in Toronto. Coming up, Ivan Lendl, who's won this tournament 3 times, will go for a semifinal victory against Jimmy Arias. That match will follow, and it'll be live right here on ESPN. And this time it's McEnroe's turn to net the forehand. 40-30, another match point coming.
40-30.
And once again, the sun pops out here in Montreal. The way the photographers see it. And Connors' shot is long. McEnroe has reached the finals of the 1985 Canadian Open, second straight time in the finals. He wraps up Jimmy Connors in straight sets, 6-2 and 6-3. Simply overpowering on his serve. In the second set, Jimmy Connors was able to score only 3 points on McEnroe's serve. So John McEnroe marches into tomorrow's championship. It'll begin at 1 o'clock on ESPN. We have another semifinal match to follow. We have a lot more tennis coming up from Jerry Park in Montreal.